All right. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Good afternoon or good evening, depending on wherever you are. We're so excited to be here co-hosting today Intel and IntelliSite to talk about really the work that we've been doing to push the edge in AI-enabled solutions for smarter communities. So we're going to have so much fun today. I'm very excited. We have an amazing panel of thought leaders who have joined us today to really help provide an exciting discussion. So please, if you will allow me to introduce our amazing panel of speakers. Joining me, our very own Intel's global GM, Samir Sharma. He is a thought leader in AI and the IoT ecosystem and drives multiple strategic initiatives with 20-plus year-long career history, and is very excited to have his expertise with us here today. So thank you very much, Samir, for being with us. You may be muted. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here, and I look forward to the conversation, sharing what we have learned, as well as learning from my fellow panelists.
Absolutely. Also joining us, we have the amazing Mario Campos from IntelliSite, who has been part of the amazing creation of the solution, 20-plus years in the making. And we are very excited to hear from Mario and learn a little bit more from him about really what it takes to create this type of solution and push the boundaries in AI and IoT to really bring innovative solutions. So thank you, Mario, for being with us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kyla, and looking forward to spending time with you and Samir as well. Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but of course not least, we have Agustin Caverzasi, who is the president of AI at IntelliSite, another amazing mastermind behind the creation of this very exciting solution. And very excited to hear from him also and learn from him about what does it take to really bring this kind of thing to market. So without further ado, thank you so much to our panelists for being here, and we really are looking forward to getting started.
Thank you,
please also feel free to add any questions into the chat that you might have for our amazing team, and we'll absolutely have time to go over your questions at the end of our session today. Perfect. So I would love for us to start and open it up with talking about, what is the problem that we are trying to solve? What are the challenges that communities are facing today? And how can we really use the technology to help respond to the question? So Mario and Agustin, maybe if you want to start us off, and Samir would love to hear from you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So yeah, definitely. It's always exciting. The smart communities and the overall work that we do together with you guys at Intel has been extremely amazing. And these are basically some of the key areas where we see our focus as we work with so many agencies. And I'll start off by talking about the safer community, right? I always kind of joke, tell our team that is usually our foot in the door, right? There's a lot of issues throughout the community, a lot of safety and security concerns that we really need to address. And so AI is definitely a key player in that. And, we'll find things like illegal dumping prevention or copper theft prevention. We're providing a lot of security and safety around city parks, for example, or key city areas. And so that's really, a lot of the core of what we offer is usually, basically helping the community become a lot safer. Then we move on into the smarter community. And that's really where we're taking the AI and all the data that's being generated and collected and starting to make sense out of that data, right? So we look at transportation, and Agustin will certainly be talking about transportation here in a moment, but that's really where we're now leveraging the AI and the data that's being produced to then make sense and really come up with some metrics and outcomes around that data. And the last one is connected community. And I'd love to share that, 2020 was definitely a critical year for many of us. And in the case of cities, what we're finding is that a lot of cities are really working hard to get the city more connected, what's called the digital divide, or being able to close in on the digital divide. And so we're finding that city parks become a key area for cities to start developing smart solutions, connected solutions, providing public Wi-Fi, as well as being able to protect those areas with cameras, security, and of course, after hours, being able to prevent vandalism and graffiti, which are some of the issues we see out there. So that's kind of my take on it. Agustin, any comments from you?
Oh, I think that's great. And as you said, we're going to be talking about, park safety and security, which falls under the, safer community and smarter community, as well as intelligent transportation. So those are going to be, the key areas we're going to be covering today in this webinar.
And I think if I can add to what Mario and Augustine just described, I think globally we see this consistent theme of the top use cases. They tend to be around mobility and the ability for goods and people to be able to move from point A to point B. They're on public safety, which we just talked about, as well as sustainability. And the relative importance changes as you go from different cities, to different parts of the world. But the themes are very, very consistent. So it's very gratifying to see, because that's how we can find scale, by finding common themes and focusing our solutions on those themes.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love it. I would love for us to talk a little bit about how technology can help with some of the common challenges that we're facing. So, can we talk a little bit about some of the things that we're seeing here and how we can respond using the technology? Mario, if you'd like to start.
All right, great. Thank you, Carla. So absolutely. So, what we're seeing here on the screen is really what we consider the key stakeholders in a community, right? A city, county, state agency. And really, as you work with us and kind of learn about our solutions and look at the collateral and the marketing that we kind of wrap our heads around, we'll find that we consider these folks our buyer personas, right? These are the folks within the city that are responsible for many areas of the community. So we start off with the chief of police, and that person basically represents public safety in general, right? So we're helping basically public safety be able to leverage our solutions together with Intel to provide AI and what we call the eyes on the sky, right? Being able to monitor areas that are hard to reach. And that, in essence, provides police force multiplication, right? That's really a priority number one. Next, we have Parks Director, and as you can imagine, they're definitely, they got their hands full, and being able to protect city parks and be able to plan around, the growth of the city. And so what we find is that normally when there's an incident, something happens in the city, and it affects one of the parks, now it becomes top priority for all leaders, right, including council members, the mayor. Everyone's really worried about what's going to happen at the parks. And so that's really where our solutions with Intel come into play, where we can deliver AI and be able to, in essence, provide that safety and security that citizens and constituents are looking for. Transportation manager is definitely another big area. And that's where, again, we'll be covering that in detail, but being able to provide crosswalk safety, for example, tracking jaywalking, illegal turns, things that may help a transportation manager be able to go back and optimize an intersection, right? There may be needs that are not being addressed. And in our case, with the help of Agustin and his team, and of course, working with the OpenVINO platform from Intel, we've been able to create AI models that look for things like near hit accidents, right? So we're looking for trends or basically areas of the city where an accident may have occurred and nothing really happened, nothing was reported, but that information is still critical for the city to go back and address it, right? And be able to understand that they may have a trend around that. We look at public works managers, and they really got their hands full with things like illegal dumping around the city. We find, and we're working with some large cities in the US where they're spending upwards of $4, maybe $5 million a year just handling illegal dumping and being able to go out there and collect that. And so again, with the OpenVINO platform and the AI, we're able to create models that look for vehicles parking on the side of the road, somebody getting out of that vehicle, dumping tires, a fridge, whatever it is. And so, our team in either the police department or our command center can actually engage and be able to stop that situation from the get-go. And the last one I'd love to mention is the HOA, homeowners associations, right? And that's a little different, we may think, from public sector, but they're really also part of the community, right? And so what we find is that HOAs and property managers are very interested in participating in what's called the PPP, or the public-private partnership, right? Where they're basically sponsoring part of the cost of the solution and being able to provide some benefits to the community and public safety for them to have access to that data and the AI that's being produced. So that's my take, Agustin, or maybe if you want to comment on this, please.
Yeah, perfect. And actually going maybe to the next slide, we can start, transitioning more towards the technology, right? So we have edge sensors and cameras. We provide with a catalog of more than 200 sensors. Our customers can go and select for different goals. We then take, cameras. We are, concept that is very important is that we are camera agnostic, which means basically that, imagine if you're a city and you have, 500 cameras in your city, you don't need to go and reinvest in, new cameras or new infrastructure, but you can basically connect those existing cameras into our edge compute infrastructure and start doing all the IoT AI processing there in real time. And of course, not only, existing cameras, but you can also add additional cameras to it and start doing more advanced AI in high resolution cameras. That's the first pillar. The second and third are connectivity and edge compute. So we process all the information at the edge. So there is a device called UIG that we manufacture, and we provide inside that box. It's basically a box you can, for instance, go and install on an intersection to do all the processing there. And it comes with an i7, which is running AI optimized with OpenVINO. So you can do there up to 4 camera streams, which connected to the cameras and IoT sensors, we are sending all that information through 4G or 5G connectivity to that device. And then for situations where you have customers where have a more centralized need for computing, let's say, for instance, 50, 60 camera range, you can then go to the MEC, which is the next option. There is this concept that it's called multi-access edge compute, which is basically a regional data center where you basically concentrate all those camera streams and IoT sensors coming to that location, and you can have different servers there having, for instance, a Xeon processor from Intel, where you can do up to, for instance, 20 streams there, again, being processed in real time just on that location. The next pillar or the next layer is the AI and IoT software. So we have a menu where you can select different features, starting from very simple stuff like, for instance, loitering or trespassing or perimeter security, to then adding more advanced features like, for instance, vehicle recognition or facial recognition and so on. The next one, it's basically around concentrating all that information flowing from the different devices in a central platform, which we call Deep Insights. There we have 3 main components. One is that you can store video. So we provide with more than 60 days of video that you can store, for instance, on a UIG at the edge. And then you can relate those events that we discover or we process through the AI, and then go find, the evidence. For instance, if you're, in charge of security for a park in a city, and you want to get notified when there is an after hours problem, security problem, like trespassing or perimeter intrusion, then you can get a notification from this platform. It could be an SMS or an email, and then you can relay that to the actual event to basically validate it, there were a problem, and take action based on that. And then finally, we have our NOC, which is a 24/7 monitoring center, where we have live agents that can go and see those events in real time and basically validate, yes, there were a security incident, and then take action or initiate a protocol based on that. That sometimes starts by a voice down notification. So we are, for instance, telling, the person that is doing something illegal, you're telling them through the speaker, please go away, you're doing something that is not allowed. But if they persist, then you can call the local security or even escalate that to law enforcement. So that's our NOC. It's a 24/7 center that we have, and it's also their responsibility to take care of the health monitoring of all the devices we have in the field. So imagine you have, deployments with thousands of sensors, cameras, edge compute. So basically, whenever there is an abnormal activity on any of those sensors, like a failure or a camera that goes offline or a server that just had a problem, we get notification from the software in real time, and then those agents can initiate a ticket to provide support in no time for customers. So I love to invite here to Samir to comment. How do you see, based on your experience at Intel, OpenVINO and the combination of IoT, AI, edge compute being applied for safer and smarter communities?
Absolutely, Augustine, and thank you. That was a great explanation. And I think the biggest point you emphasized was that we have to think about these solutions from an end-to-end perspective, edge to the network to the cloud. The first trend we are seeing is a lot more movement of compute capability towards the edge. You've sort of highlighted that in the slide where you show that capability coming in, as well as the multi-access edge computing piece, which is the compute is not just moving to the true edge, compute is also moving to the network edge. And that's where MEC plays a key role. And OpenVINO, it was really our response to the fact that it's very hard to find AI talent today. It's very hard to program new models. And by the way, new models are coming up all the time. So can we abstract out the complexity of all this underlying hardware complexity, and for the developer, make their life easier? Help them write things easily, help them preserve their investment, and help them add more capabilities over time. So that's really where we have OpenVINO to play a key role in enabling edge AI capabilities.
Thank you, Samir. Do you have maybe anything else to add from the experience that you've seen over your colorful career of how really AI and IoT have been able to drive strong results for kind of innovative things that we've started to see our communities face?
If that was a question for me, I'm happy to share.
Yes, please.
My team is a global team, so we work with customers, partners all over the world. And I think there are 3 or 4 things that I want to emphasize. The first one is we talked about stakeholders. We believe the citizens in a city are absolutely the most important stakeholders. I think having trust with them, engaging with them upfront is critical to rolling all of these out. We have to obviously respect the policies, the regulatory frameworks, as well as the cultural expectations around privacy. But I think baking that into the communication upfront leads to a better outcome. That's been sort of what our partners are telling us. The second thing I would say is we refer to the COVID-19 impact over the last year, right? In many ways, it's been the toughest phase in my memory, right? For going back many years for us as a global community. But one of the things it did was, I think it made us sort of sit up and take notice on how resilient and flexible our infrastructure needs to be. So many of the conversations around digitization have actually been accelerated as a result of COVID. And so I'm very hopeful that that momentum will continue as we are sort of coming out of the crisis, right? While acknowledging the fact that many parts of the world are still struggling with COVID-19 impact. So we're not quite out of the woods yet. And there's a lot more work to be done for us together. On the slide that you are showing, I think this combination of AI at the edge and then connectivity as well as the cloud capabilities, I think it's key to understanding the tsunami of data that is not just coming our way, but we're already in the middle of, right? Having recording 24 hours of traffic go by is not very interesting. What you want to know is, did an accident happen? And what's the appropriate level of first response we can, medical response we can provide? Is congestion starting to build up? Can we start rerouting traffic? Did a parking spot become available? So what AI at the edge allows you to do is to say, something of interest is happening, and therefore let me intelligently interpret it and use that to create some insights, and then use those insights to take some action to improve things. That's really the AI plus IoT powerful combination that we're talking about here.
I love it. Thank you so much, Samir. That's perfect. I think that's a perfect segue then into understanding really, what is the power behind the technology? And, exactly like how you were saying, it's not necessarily just about bringing edge and IoT together, but what are those actionable insights that we're really working to create? So Mario, if you want to maybe take us through use case and application so that we can better understand.
Absolutely, thank you. Yeah, this is one of my favorite slides. I think it's very colorful, and it's something that we definitely take to heart. As you mentioned, for the last 20 years, we've been developing and deploying a lot of these solutions. And I think what we've learned throughout the years is that, as we can probably all guess, city parks is a top priority for cities, right? That's where our community, citizens, constituents are spending their time with family, kids, where you would expect to be safe and secured, right, within the city. And so what we're finding is that cities are definitely spending a lot of time, effort, and money, really, being able to protect these city parks in general. And so what we've done, and again, throughout the years, working with so many public safety agencies, we've been able to collect a pretty long portfolio of use cases around city park safety. And so, our marketing team and working with Intel has done a great job just being able to kind of concentrate on this graphic and being able to showcase the breadth of the use cases that we offered, right? And so when we look at a city park, of course, you have the more common issues, parking lot security, what's called smash and grab, right? Which is very common. Somebody, you go to a park, you park your vehicle, go in to enjoy the park, you come out and find that your window was smashed and something was taken out of your vehicle, right? So there's AI models that we've developed strictly around smash and grab prevention. We're looking for example, somebody that may look suspicious looking through vehicles, trying to figure out if there's a door open. So we can actually, using AI, detect that individual and basically at some point drive that alarm back to our command center, our IntelliCare service, and notify one of our agents that we may have a suspect on the parking lot. We also do a lot of license plate recognition and vehicle classification. And so that's really basically takes us back to actually being connected to Department of Justice so that we can run every license plate through that database to see if there's a stolen vehicle, an Amber Alert, somebody that may be on the lookout. And so, we have some cities we're working with, even smaller agencies, right? I can think of one that in particular that's been really a showcase. It's a city under 50,000 people. And in their case, in the 3 years we've been working with them, we've captured almost 8 million license plates traversing through the city. And they have some pretty amazing case studies or stories. One that I'd love to share is one, because we're always thinking of criminal activity. But in this case, there was an elderly woman that with Alzheimer. And so basically the daughter, who's a nurse, came back in the morning from her night shift and threw the car keys on the table, and without realizing it, the mom got up and grabbed the keys to the car and took off in her vehicle. And this is a lady with Alzheimer's. And so, she definitely called 911 right away, but instead of the agency basically just sending police vehicles out there looking for a vehicle, they punched in the license plate into our database. And within seconds, that vehicle was spotted going through one of the intersections. And so they sent a couple of police cars out there, stopped the vehicle, and prevented, a lot of more issues. So there's definitely, always a good side to AI and what we do as a company. But, these are just good stories that I always love to share.
Thank you for sharing that. That's a great story.
Absolutely. And I'll also speak a couple more use cases here. So public Wi-Fi, again, I think we're seeing an uptake in being able to address what I mentioned before, the digital divide. And cities are very concerned with the fact that there's still a lot of areas out there in the country that are lacking proper Wi-Fi access, right, or internet access. And so basically the UIG, the box that we manufacture that Agustin was just describing before, that's a unit that basically packs all the smarts. Of course, it has the Intel OpenVINO platform. We also add basically devices to provide public Wi-Fi, right? And so what we end up doing is creating a hotspot, a bubble around the park that people can enjoy. They arrive at the park, they join the Wi-Fi, and through the AI, we're actually able to tell that agency how many people have come to the park on a specific day of the week, hour of the day, the assets within the park, how are those being utilized? Cities are concerned, especially parks directors, trying to understand, if maybe a sandbox is not getting as much usage as a playground area. And so again, those are data metrics that we're able to drive with the exact same camera in the open vino that are very useful to the city. And then here at the bottom, smart parks in general, and skate parks happen to be a very focused area for many cities. Again, I think unfortunately it attracts some issues like graffiti, vandalism. And so cities are very concerned with being able to protect skate parks in general and being able to prevent some of those issues. And what's nice about our solution is we're also able to add additional sensors on the IoT side that provide things like air quality monitoring, right? And we actually track multiple measurements. There's what's called a PM measurement, or particulate matter. And so we can track different sizes, right? Dust, smoke, just particles flowing in the air. Also, some other metrics we're tracking are basically noise pollution, brightness levels within the city. There's temperature and humidity. There may be pumps that are running the irrigation system for a park, and we're able to monitor those with wireless sensors that are battery operated that are reporting back to our UIG. And so in essence, we're able to now apply the AI models, not just to the video portion, but also the IoT data that's coming in, and try to understand some trends and just being able to better understand what's happening at some of these locations.
Perfect, thank you. I love the, just kind of understanding the essence of smart parks as the use case and application. Obviously at, sort of the biggest extreme, we think about Central Park in New York City being a incredible international destination, and all of the technology that it takes to allow the patrons and, the tourists who come and visit to make sure to keep that place safe as well. So absolutely. I love it. And I think now is a great time also to hear a little bit about a different use case from Agustin in how do we take AI and IoT in a different flavor to apply to intelligent transportation.
Thank you, Kai. So yeah, so here, very similar to what Mario mentioned for parks, right? We have the intelligent transportation. And we've seen during the last couple of years, many cities in the US starting to implement a program called Vision Zero. Basically, the goal of this program is to decrease pedestrian fatalities, traffic congestion, and CO2 emissions to zero by 2030. So this chart here shows different use cases we've designed in order to help cities and municipalities and counties to basically accomplish those goals. So we're going to see on the next slide basically some of the most common use cases that we've discovered, starting with crosswalk safety, which basically imagine you have a camera like you can see there in that illustration, where we have a camera looking at the crosswalk, and we can start understanding things like the foot traffic flow that we have in that intersection. And then combine that with, for instance, vehicle traffic, which will allow us to understand how many near-hit accidents happen. So based on information like that, also combined for instance, vehicle that has been stopped illegally in the middle of the crosswalk, or knowing how many pedestrians are waiting to cross intersection. Those are all metrics that allows city managers and directors of DOT departments at cities to make informed decisions. And crosswalk safety is really about decreasing pedestrian fatalities. So you can start now understanding, okay, I have these and these intersection in my city that are more problematic than these other ones. So then I can start, investing more on those, changing infrastructure there, and then start measuring with real data, how that change that I made impacted in my metrics and information. The next one is pretty similar, but now based for a different goal, which is either the intersection or roadway, which we apply a very similar concept, again, looking at with AI and IoT different data, but now we are trying to decrease, for instance, congestion. So I can see in an intersection, where the traffic is flowing, how many vehicles do I have, And we can combine again with more incident-related features, like for instance, jaywalking. Like how many people do I have in this roadway that is doing jaywalking, or how many vehicles are crossing double line, which is illegal, or what I've discovered, wrong-way drivers, and this particular area in my city is the most problematic. So again, similar concept to the crosswalk safety, but now looking to decrease congestion or understand where do I have most of the problems. And finally, digital signage is really how we provide with the outcome, right? How do we take action based on that data that we receive in real time? So we can start now, for instance, notifying a pedestrian, like, be careful, there is a vehicle approaching the intersection at a high speed. Or there is a congested area, so please take a different a different path. So those are the things through digital signage. Basically, we are intercepting into the infrastructure of a city to try to make it more efficient and help city decrease those accidents. So again, this is a combination of AI, edge compute, and IoT, which in this case allows city managers, DOT departments, and also the safety and security related roles or people in the city to make better and more informed decisions based on this data.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Agustin and Mario, for taking us through sort of the use cases and applications. Samir, do you have anything that you'd like to add for us on the importance of purpose-built solutions for IoT that really keep the end user and end-to-end deployment in mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think the use cases that we just went through on the transportation are close and near and dear to my heart, because traffic congestion is a problem all of us can identify with, and frankly, some of the technology we are using to manage red light, green light timings is decades old. Those loops that you see inserted into the asphalt on the road, that's really probably 20-30-year-old technology. And I think the ability for the video and analytics to run real time and analyze the traffic patterns and be able to do things like real time adjustment of red light, green light timings, to me, that's the ultimate goal, right? A typical intersection in the US, and these are US numbers, is tuned every 5 to 7 years. Ideally, we should be fine tuning this every year at the minimum, because people move in and out of neighborhoods, they buy cars, demographics change. And hey, you've got the cameras, you've got the roadside unit. Why shouldn't they work with each other together as a system of systems to truly take advantage of the compute and connectivity, and look in one direction and say, we've got 20 cars backed up. On the other side, there's no traffic flowing. We need to adjust the green light timing, real time. So from a technology perspective, it's doable, right? It just takes a while to get these implemented. But that's where also there are sort of unlimited possibilities on how the infrastructure around us can become more flexible, more responsive, and ultimately lead to better quality of life for the citizens, because that's the end goal, right? We're not doing technology just for the sake of technology. We're trying to use it to improve the quality of life, to make people happier, a bit less stressed out. And when crises like COVID-19 happen, give the cities, the citizens, the ability to be able to use this infrastructure to get past it or get through it.
Absolutely. I know that when I'm just trying to decompress, nothing makes me feel better than alleviated traffic and a gorgeous park, right? So absolutely. Beautiful. So before we go on to diving into what Intel and IntelliSite are doing together, just wanted to get Mario and
in real time, and only sending the information that we care about, which is typically metadata that is being used for outcomes or alerts, or just video, but just on demand, right? You have an event, you discover there is an issue, then you can pull on demand that data without the need of having to stream data all the time in real time to the cloud or data center. So that's the for edge use cases. Then we have a second option, which is what we call near edge, which is this MEC concept that we introduced before. And imagine you have 40, 50, 60 cameras you need to power with this technology now. So we partner also with companies like Dell Technologies, where they have different sets of servers that they can provide. And inside those servers, we have a Xeon processor from Intel, where we can do up to 20 streams, again, being processed in real time, accelerated with OpenVINO. So in both scenarios, that information flows to our MEC, or it could be also the cloud, where we centralize all that information. And there is, for instance, a single server getting all that information. And then there is where we run our Deep Insights platform, which I'm going to comment, I think it's the next couple of slides, but basically is how we centralize all that information for outcomes. That platform also allows us to integrate with third-party software, like a BMS, could be a Genetec, a Milestone, or any other BMS system for those customers that are already running their video management there. And also with BI tools, we are seeing more and more cities and customers trying to build their own data lakes or data warehouses, where they need this information to flow to their tool, so they can then massage and build their dashboards and information. So that's sort of the general overview, more from a technology perspective of how this solution works.
Thank you, Agustin. Absolutely. Are you able to share with us a little bit more? What is your opinion on leveraging the benefits of Intel technology to build this type of solution?
Yeah, absolutely. Intel has been key here. As you can see, on every single unit where we're doing compute, we have different Intel processors. The thing that I think is extremely important, and the moment we realize we could be doing real-time AI using Intel processors, is that it's not only for new infrastructure that we can deploy, but also imagine, the amount of processors that are out there deployed through the years. Of course, Intel being a leader in the space, now you can just, powering this with our software and leveraging OpenVINO, you can now power any computer, any server that is being deployed out there with AI. So that's very powerful, and from a partnership perspective, we've been collaborating for more than probably 2 years now with Intel, and it's been fantastic. We are very happy with the collaboration. So maybe I'll invite Samir to comment here from his perspective. How Intel.
Yes, please.
Absolutely, Augustine. It's been a pleasure partnering with you and the other ecosystem partners to pull this all together, right? I think there are 3 things I want to emphasize, sort of extract out of the picture you see in front of you. The first one is, I always say it takes a village to build a smart city. And really, you see partners like Intel, IntelliSite, Dell, Genetec, Milestone. You see pieces coming together. And as you can imagine, this gets me to point 2. Putting this all together is super complex. And it's not a one-time and done deal, right? These solutions, these end-to-end solutions have to evolve. They have to have a roadmap, which means we have to have partners who have respective domain expertise, but also collaborating with each other to pull this all together. And that dovetails into the third point, which is to be able to do this and leverage the best available technology, the pieces, the Lego blocks that you're putting together have to be based on open standards. They have to be able to sort of come together nicely, because if you have to put a lot of human logic or glue logic to put it all together, things will not sustain over time. The investments we make in infrastructure it's not like your typical consumer device that you can replace every 2 to 3 years. This infrastructure is going to sit for 10, 15, 20 years. So there has to be sort of thought put into how to future-proof it, how to evolve it. What might the requirements look like 10, 15 years from now? Because I don't know what the future will look like, but one thing I know for sure is it won't look like the past or the present, right? So if you know that, then you have to think about how much compute capability, how much upgradability to be put in place to be able to accommodate those new use cases that we know will come up inevitably. Because one thing we can count on is human ingenuity, right? Creativity to make things better, creativity to invent. I think that's what you see coming together over here. Of course, our investments in OpenVINO go beyond the investment at the hardware level to make sure that we are making life easier for the edge AI capabilities. But then also we work with our counterparts in the Intel Network Group to make sure we're bringing together the best of assets. Our CEO calls them the superpowers, right? AI at the edge computing in general, network connectivity, including 5G and cloud. But really, the superpower is realized when you put all these things together because they work synergistically. The final thing I want to say is there's a lot of focus on data, but I think ultimately it's about data to insights to decisions. And I think the ability for AI at the edge to anonymize this data, to have aggregate data available, to talk about the kind of use cases, I think is a very powerful and important thing, because then you can look at your existing infrastructure and say, based on how I'm seeing it being utilized, how do I either modify it or the next set of infrastructure, how do I create it so it's more responsive to the needs of the citizens? That's a very important thing. And by the way, these needs are evolving, right? So one thing COVID-19 has taught us, it's that flexibility and resilience is the name of the game. With that, back to you.
Oh, thank you, Samir. So very powerful. I think absolutely agree, right? The only constant we can count on is change. So Mario, anything to follow up to kind of reinforce that point that Samir is making about resilient but flexible infrastructure is really going to be the name of the game. I know that you've seen the creativity, just like how Samir is talking about span over 20 years. So how do we need to be thinking about it going forward?
That's right. I love Samir's comment about future-proof, right? And being able to use an open standard, something that we can leverage for many years to come. And I always think of a city in particular that we started working with many years ago, city of Napa, actually, in California. That was one of our very initial cities that we worked with. And we have over probably 50 of these units spread throughout the city. And as of today, they're still using that infrastructure, right? These are UIGs that we installed 17 years ago on 3G and have been upgraded throughout the years. And there's definitely a lot of new technology that's coming to play now, even going into 5G. But the reality is that those locations remain the same. And the customer's expectation is that the outcome will only improve with time, right? It's always the same outcome. It's always the same use case. How can we do it better? And one of the key things about the infrastructure is also durability and being able to have a reliable platform. And that's something that in our case, working with cities, in many cases, we go out there and close lanes, do work at night just to be able to reach certain locations at intersections or highways. And so we need that system to be super reliable, right? We cannot be climbing that pole every so often to do repairs or kind of troubleshooting, right? It needs to be rock solid. And that's something that we find with Intel and working with your team as always.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Perfect. Well, let's get to, want to touch on this slide here and make sure that we absolutely plug in IntelliCare and tell our audience about our amazing solution. And then we'll open it up for questions for our audience today. So please go ahead, Mario, if you want to touch, or Agustin, excuse me.
Yeah, I can take this one. So basically, this is our what we call Deep Insights. It's our software platform. So I was saying before, all the data coming from IoT and cameras, it's being centralized in a single place where this is the software platform. So we provide here with three main aspects. One, which is as a user, you can create alerts and notifications. It could be an SMS or email that you receive based on certain incidents that you care about. And all that is being done with drag and drops just on the platform. So it's very easy to create. Then we also provide with all the data visualization charts and tables where you can use it's off the shelf, so you can see those dashboards that we provide, but you can also customize based on your needs. So this is sort of the command platform to understand what's going on. Like I said before, on the traffic and transportation, which are the busiest intersections, which are the ones that are having most of the incidents and problems. So based on that, you can start making more informed decisions. So that's the second aspect. And the last one, it's about, fleet management. So whenever there is a problem with any of the devices, you're going to see an alert here, and then our NOC agent is going to take care with with a support team of that particular issue. It also allows for integration with third-party software platforms like BMS's BI tools, and also allows for third-party IoT and AI integrations if you want to use our existing offering, but there is a particular sensor that we don't cover or AI algorithm that you want to add, you can easily onboard those into the platform and start looking for that outcome and information in real time.
Thank you so much. Marta, do you want to help us understand sort of IntelliCare as a service and what that means for our customers?
Absolutely. So yeah, this is also another favorite topic for me. IntelliCare is a service that we've developed throughout the years, and it's definitely a very hands-on service. And I think what's interesting is early on, as we started developing a lot of these solutions and utilizing AI to look for things like criminal activity, right, or certain conditions. One customer in particular, a public utility, electric utility, that we protect, many of their substations, many of their equipment yards, areas where they leave equipment overnight. We started deploying a lot of these units, and then working with the security director, he said, okay, now who's going to be responding to those alarms, right? Like, you actually need some type of supervision that allows the system to be 100% successful, right? Because we're generating alarms late at night, but there's really a need for somebody to be able to respond to those alarms. And in that case, that security director said, well, I don't want to be the one being woken up in the middle of the night and trying to address a situation that may require police assistance, right? Or some type of escalation. And so that's really what IntelliCare is all about, being able to provide 24/7, 365 monitoring of the AI alarms that are being generated with the OpenVINO platform. We also provide a lot of supervision and monitoring of IoT alarms, right? We work with water utilities where we may be detecting water levels rising or being lower than expected. And so we're able to place a call to a water master and let them know that there's an issue with the canal, for example. And the third area is basically the health and basically the upkeeping of the UIGs and the MEC environment and all the solutions that we put together with you guys. And in that case, our agents are also responsible on an area of the department to look for the health checks of those units and being able to provide updates. And if there's an update to a firmware, that's being ran across the entire fleet of units out in the field. So there's definitely a lot of power around IntelliCare.
Perfect. Thank you so much for helping us understand IntelliCare a little bit more. Mm-hmm. Well, that is absolutely fabulous. Wanted to share a little bit about IntelliSite's customers. And here is a little bit of a blast of the amazing case study that we talked about with the city of Riverbank, which you absolutely will want to check out on IntelliSite's YouTube. And so I really just want to make sure that as we open up, I want to get some just quick feedback from Samir to close us out on anything, the theme regarding perception versus reality, right? I think the perception is that we have this amazing, smart, usable technology, but the reality is it does have to be just that, usable and friendly, one pane of glass for our people who are going to be using and benefiting from it. Anything to add before we open up for Q&A, Samir?
No, I think you summarized it well, right? Ultimately, it's about, if you really want to get to truly smart cities, it's got to be the right combination of technology, decision-making, policy framework, and funding. Those things have to come together. If it was only a technology issue, we would have solved it years ago, right? We know we have the right technology, we can deploy it. But I think all of this stuff has to come together, and ultimately, as I said earlier, citizens are such an important stakeholder in these conversations. I think they have to be brought in early on to both convey the benefits as well as be very open and transparent about what data is being collected and how it will be utilized. That is really the path to getting a harmonious implementation done that the citizens will buy into, they will support, and they will ask more of, because they'll see the benefits, right? Less traffic, less accidents, better maintenance of the infrastructure. All these use cases are sort of non-controversial. Every citizen will come and tell you that they want to see more of this, not less. Mm-hmm. And I think the key to getting there is partnerships, and that's what we talked about for the last sort of 45 minutes.
I love it. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Perfect. Well, while we, while we wait for questions to come into the chat here, why don't we kick off our discussion with sort of an open question? And if anybody from the audience wants to add in and keep on with our conversation, please feel free to drop those questions into the chat, which is being monitored, and we'll absolutely be able to fold those into our discussion here. So we spent, the last 45 minutes talking about all of this amazing technology, all of the problems and challenges that we're trying to solve. We also know that within our industry, we have a bunch of city officials and city leaders who are trying to figure out within their own communities, how do you take this from ideation to creation to real life? So Samira, if we could start with you, I would love to know, have you heard of any best known methods from people within your global community that you're hearing from that we could maybe share with the audience today?
Yeah, I'll start with something close to home here for me. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I sit on the San Jose Mayor's Smart Cities Advisory Council. We meet periodically, or at least used to meet periodically before COVID. Right now, everybody's heads down trying to tackle that issue. And to me, that's a great example of reaching out and building partnership, public-private partnerships. I think that's one of the key initiatives our city leaders can take. And that's important for a couple of reasons. I think I actually believe in diversity coming together to find the best solution. And the public-private partnership brings those diverse views together. It also brings diverse capabilities together. I think the private companies have a lot to offer, and the public officials obviously have the view of the challenges as well as the opportunities at a city level. So I think that partnership, I think, would be a key BKM. The second example I would like to share with you is Singapore. Right in the middle of the pandemic, they increased their spending on infrastructure, on digitization and smart city solutions by 30%. Now, not everybody can do it, right? Every country has a different way of organizing things. But to me, that's a great example of trying to leverage a crisis to come out of it stronger and using it as an impetus, as a trigger to go make things better. And they decided to do it, and I'm very confident. Every time I go to Singapore, I find new use cases. One example I can share with you is they have a lot of folks who are demographically older, and they live in government-built housing. And these people also get free medical care or close to free medical care. But a lot of their doctor visits are standard operating visits. So they said, how can we minimize that? Because it's not good for the elderly to have to take public transport and go. It also burdens the transportation system. And it's not the best, medical care if it's all you're doing is refilling your prescription, right? So they built a sort of a digital kiosk below each one of these buildings where these elderly people can go, they get authenticated. And once they're authenticated, their prescription just drops down, they take it and they go back to their home. So now you've kept the citizen at the center of it all and use a bunch of technologies, and the benefits are not just limited to medical care. It's less public infrastructure usage, less public transit capacity usage, and so on and so forth. The third example I can share is we are working with